The morning shift at the Deep Space Communications Center started like any other Tuesday for Jake Martinez. He sat at his console drinking coffee and watching the endless stream of data from satellites and space stations. The radio waves from distant stars painted patterns on his screen that he had learned to read like a familiar book. Most days brought nothing but cosmic background, noise and the occasional signal from their own ships returning from Mars or the asteroid belt. At exactly 9:15 in the morning, everything changed. A signal appeared on his screen that made him spill coffee on his keyboard. The pattern was too organized to be natural and too complex to be from any human source. Jake called his supervisor immediately. Dr. Lisa Johnson arrived at the communication center within an hour. She was the kind of scientist who got excited about discovering new types of bacteria, so finding an actual alien signal made her hands shake with anticipation. She studied the mathematical sequences that filled page after page of printouts. The signal repeated every 12 minutes and contained what looked like basic mathematical proofs followed by star charts, and finally something that resembled a greeting. Dr. Alex Turner joined them by afternoon. As Earth's best language expert, he had decoded communications from every human culture that had ever existed. This was his first attempt at something truly alien. He spread the signal patterns across 3 large tables and began looking for recurring symbols and mathematical relationships. The aliens seemed to understand that math was a universal language. By evening, they had decoded enough to understand the basic message. The signal came from beings who called themselves the Veltar. They claimed to represent something called the Galactic Council. They wanted to meet humanity and establish what they called diplomatic relations. Most importantly, they were asking permission to approach Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the report at her home during dinner with her family. She had been expecting this day since she was a child reading science fiction novels. The reality felt both more exciting and more terrifying than any story she had ever read. She immediately called an emergency meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the President. The secure conference room beneath the Pentagon, filled with the most important people in the American military and government. President Harrison listened to the briefing with the kind of calm that only came from years of dealing with impossible situations. He asked the right questions about verification and potential threats. The scientists confirmed that the signal definitely came from beyond the solar system and showed technology far beyond human capabilities. Colonel Ben Carter found himself assigned to lead the military escort for what might be humanity's first meeting with aliens. He was chosen because of his experience in diplomatic protection and his ability to stay calm under pressure. He spent the night reading every science fiction novel he could find and trying to imagine what these Veltar might look like. The aliens requested permission to send a small ship to a location near the moon. They provided exact coordinates and promised to maintain a safe distance until humans gave them permission to approach closer. Their messages showed a level of politeness that seemed almost excessive. They apologized for interrupting human activities and promised they meant no harm. Dr. Johnson noticed something strange about the alien communications. Despite their advanced technology and membership in a galactic civilization, the Veltar seemed nervous about meeting humans. Their messages included multiple assurances about their peaceful intentions and repeated requests for confirmation the humans wanted to meet them. It was the kind of behavior she had seen in animals that were afraid of predators. The decision to meet came after 3 days of debate. President Harrison authorized a controlled first contact at a secure facility in Colorado. The location was chosen because it was isolated and heavily defended, but also because it was far from major population centers. If something went wrong, the damage would be limited. Jake Martinez volunteered to be part of the communication team for the actual meeting. After discovering the signal, he felt responsible for seeing the process through to the end. Dr. Johnson and Dr. Turner would handle the scientific and linguistic aspects while Colonel Carter managed security. The Veltar ship appeared on radar exactly when they said it would. It was larger than any human spacecraft, but smaller than expected for an interstellar vessel. The ship maintained position beyond the moon's orbit and sent a final message requesting permission to transport their delegation to the meeting site. When the aliens materialized in the secure chamber, they looked nothing like the monsters from old movies. They were tall and graceful with silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their large eyes showed intelligence and something that looked like curiosity mixed with caution. Ambassador Nithvol spoke in carefully pronounced English that he had apparently learned from studying human broadcasts. The first meeting lasted 6 hours and covered basic topics like biology and culture. The Veltar brought gifts of art and music from their homeworld. They offered to share medical knowledge and clean energy technology. They spoke about the Galactic Council as a peaceful organization dedicated to helping new species develop safely. Dr. Johnson kept noticing small details that troubled her. The aliens kept their distance during conversations. Their hands trembled slightly when they shook hands with humans. Most telling of all their bio readings showed stress levels that remained elevated throughout the entire meeting. Despite their friendly words and generous offers, the Veltar were afraid of something, and that something seemed to be the humans themselves. Commander Sam Parker had been monitoring alien communications for 3 weeks when he noticed the first discrepancy. The official diplomatic messages that the Veltar shared with human negotiators were polite and formal. They talked about cultural exchange and mutual benefits. But the private communications between the alien ship and their homeworld told a completely different story. The translation algorithms had been working overtime to decode the mathematical language that the Veltar used for their internal communications. Dior Amy Lewis had developed most of the decoding software during her years studying animal behavior patterns. She noticed that the aliens used specific mathematical sequences when they were stressed or afraid. These same sequences appeared constantly in their private messages. Parker brought the inconsistencies to General Chris Thompson during the morning briefing. Thompson had been skeptical about the alien contact from the beginning. He believed that any species advanced enough for interstellar travel was probably advanced enough to destroy humanity if they wanted to. The fact that they seemed afraid made him even more suspicious. Dr. Turner worked with a team of linguists to analyze every word and gesture from the diplomatic meetings. The Veltar delegation was led by Ambassador Nithvol, but included scientists and cultural experts. They answered questions about their technology and society with careful precision. They seemed eager to share information about other alien species and the structure of galactic civilization. During one evening meeting, Dr. Johnson served dinner to the alien delegation in an attempt to create a more relaxed atmosphere. The human team had learned that the Veltar could eat most human foods and seemed to enjoy the variety of flavors. General Thompson joined them to discuss military history and compare different approaches to warfare. The conversation started innocently enough. Dr. Turner mentioned his interest in ancient Rome and how human military tactics had evolved over thousands of years. He described the Roman legions and their systematic approach to conquest. The humans found it fascinating to compare their history with what they knew about other species. Kithran was the youngest member of the Veltar delegation and served as their military advisor. When Dr. Turner began describing human warfare, this alien went completely silent. His bio readings spiked to levels that Dr. Johnson had never seen before. The other Veltar immediately changed the subject, and the meeting ended earlier than planned. Agent Maria Santos had been assigned to monitor all alien communications using the newest decoding equipment. She was fluent in 17 human languages. and had picked up the mathematical principles of Veltar communication faster than anyone expected. That night, she intercepted an urgent message from the alien ship to their command structure. The message was marked with priority codes that indicated extreme importance. Santos worked through the night to translate the mathematical sequences into readable English. What she found made her immediately contact Admiral Sullivan. The message contained phrases like classification error and immediate reclassification. Most disturbing was a term that translated roughly as Extinction Class Omega. Captain Danny Rodriguez was monitoring the alien ship from his position aboard the space station. Unity, the Geltar vessel, had maintained a stable orbit since their arrival and showed no signs of aggressive behavior. But during the night following the dinner meeting, Rodriguez noticed changes in the ship's energy patterns. The aliens were quietly charging their faster-than-light engines. Dr. Lewis analyzed the behavioral patterns of the Veltar delegation during their 3 weeks of meetings. She had spent years studying how different species reacted to threats and stress. The aliens showed classic signs of prey animals trying to appear calm in the presence of a predator. They maintained submissive postures and avoided sudden movements. Most telling was their tendency to position themselves near exits during every meeting. Admiral Sullivan called an emergency meeting with the senior staff. Agent Santos presented her translation of the intercepted communications. The Veltar were reporting to their superiors that they had made a serious error in classifying humanity. They were requesting permission to withdraw from contact and recommended that Earth be placed under some kind of galactic quarantine. Parker had continued monitoring communications and discovered that the alien ship was receiving responses from at least 12 different sources across the galaxy. The Galactic Council was apparently holding emergency sessions to discuss what they called the human problem. Several messages contained mathematical sequences that Santos recognized as expressions of fear and panic. Colonel Carter increased security around the meeting facility without alerting the alien delegation. He positioned additional troops in the surrounding area and prepared contingency plans for various scenarios. The aliens had shown no signs of aggression, but their apparent fear made them unpredictable. Carter knew that frightened beings sometimes did desperate things. Dr. Johnson confronted Ambassador Nithful during their next scheduled meeting. She presented the bio readings that showed constant stress levels among the delegation. She asked directly why the aliens seemed afraid of humans. The ambassador's response was evasive, but he did admit that humanity was different from other species they had encountered. The breakthrough came when Dr. Turner gained access to the Galactic Council's classification system through the alien computer networks. The Veltar had been surprisingly careless about network security. Turner discovered that every known species was rated on a scale that measured their potential threat level to galactic civilization. The classification system included hundreds of different species, organized into categories like prey species herbivore, civilization's apex predators, and technological specialists. Each category had multiple threat levels ranging from harmless to extinction class. Turner found humanity's original classification and understood why the aliens were panicking. Humans had been initially classified as a standard apex predator species. The Galactic Council had expected to find a civilization built around physical dominance or superior weapons technology. Instead, they found something that did not fit any existing category. The Veltar field team was requesting an immediate reclassification to extinction class. Omega, a category that Turner discovered, was reserved for species that posed threats to the continued existence of galactic civilization. Parker intercepted the final message that convinced him the aliens were preparing to leave. The Veltar command structure had authorized immediate withdrawal from Earth's solar system. They were ordered to break off all contact and establish a quarantine perimeter around human space. The message included warnings about humanity's true nature that would be distributed to all member species of the Galactic Council. That evening, Ambassador Nithvul requested a private meeting with President Harrison and his senior advisors. The alien's usual composure had been replaced by obvious anxiety. He explained that the Galactic Council had reviewed all available data about human civilization and reached a disturbing conclusion. Humanity was not just another apex predator species. They were something far more dangerous. The evidence suggested that humans had a unique ability that terrified every other species in the galaxy. They did not just defeat other apex predators in competition. They drove them to complete extinction, and they seemed to do it without even realizing what they were doing. Dr. Helen Wright had not slept for 3 days. The Galactic Council archives that Ambassador Nithvul had reluctantly shared contained information that changed everything humans thought they knew about life in the universe. She sat surrounded by printed documents that described a galaxy organized around a hierarchy of fear that had existed for millions of years. The classification system was more complex than anything humans had imagined. Every species was rated, not just on their technology or intelligence, but on their capacity to eliminate other species. At the bottom were the prey species that had never developed beyond basic agriculture. In the middle were the standard predators that dominated their home planets through strength or cunning. At the top were the apex predators. Dr. Wright studied the files on species like the Cathara, who had conquered 14 star systems using plasma weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Jekti had earned their classification by literally eating other intelligent species and using their knowledge to advance their own technology. The Mordok had wiped out every other species on their homeworld before expanding into space. Colonel Nancy Davis worked with Dr. Wright to understand why these apex predators were afraid of humans. The files showed that apex predator species typically fought each other for territory and resources. Sometimes one species would defeat another and claim their space. But the defeated species usually survived somewhere else in the galaxy or evolved. New strategies to compete. Dr. Amy Lewis made the first breakthrough when she analyzed human evolutionary history alongside the alien classification data. Every other apex predator species had evolved from either pack hunters or solitary predators. They had developed intelligence and technology to improve their existing hunting strategies. Humans were completely different. The Veltar archives contained detailed studies of human evolution that were more complete than anything human scientists had compiled. The aliens had been watching Earth for thousands of years and documenting the rise of human civilization. Their conclusions were disturbing and fascinating at the same time. Humans had evolved from prey animals. Their ancestors had been hunted by larger and stronger predators for millions of years. But instead of developing better defenses, humans had learned to hunt in groups so large and so coordinated that they could exhaust any predator. They had become persistence hunters who could track their prey for days or weeks until the target collapsed from exhaustion. Dr. Paul Anderson compared the human evolutionary path with every other species in the galactic database. The pattern was unprecedented in the known galaxy. Humans had not just learned to hunt. They had learned to hunt things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They had developed the ability to coordinate their efforts across massive populations in ways that no other species could match. The truly frightening part was what happened when humans encountered other apex predators. The alien archives contained detailed records of every major extinction event in Earth's history. The timing of these events corresponded exactly with developments in human tool-making and social organization. Colonel Davis studied the military implications with growing alarm. Human warfare was unlike anything else in the galactic records. Other species fought for territory, or resources, or dominance. Humans fought for ideas and principles. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts that other species could barely understand. Dr. Lewis found evidence that human hunting strategies had evolved into military tactics that were specifically designed to eliminate apex predators. Human armies did not just defeat their enemies. They systematically destroyed the enemy's ability to recover or adapt. They targeted breeding populations and resource bases and cultural institutions. The alien archives contained surveillance footage of human military operations throughout history. Ambassador Nithville had been reluctant to share this information, but President Harrison had insisted on seeing everything. The footage showed human armies using tactics that were designed to ensure that their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Dr. Wright discovered that the Galactic Council had been tracking species extinction rates for over 2 million years. The normal background rate was stable across most of the galaxy. Apex predator species occasionally eliminated each other, but new ones evolved to fill empty ecological niches. The system maintained a rough balance between predators and prey. Everything changed when humans began expanding beyond Earth. The alien records showed that human exploration missions had visited dozens of star systems over the past 50,000 years. In every system where humans had established even temporary settlements, the apex predator species had mysteriously vanished within a few thousand years. Captain Rob Williams led a joint expedition to investigate one of these extinct civilizations. The planet Kethmer had once been home to the Draktai, a species that had dominated their star system for over 100,000 years. The Draktai had been classic apex predators with advanced weapons and a military culture based on conquest. Archaeological evidence on Kethmer told a story that chilled everyone involved in the expedition. The Draktai had encountered humans approximately 12,000 years ago. Initial contact had been peaceful with humans, establishing small trading posts and research stations. The aliens had viewed humans as a minor prey species that posed no threat. Within 3,000 years, the Draktai civilization had completely collapsed. The archaeological record showed no signs of warfare or catastrophic events. The apex predator species had simply stopped reproducing and had gradually died out. Their cities were intact, and their technology was undamaged, but there were no survivors. Dr. Anderson found similar patterns on 17 other worlds that humans had visited in the distant past. In every case, the local apex predator species had vanished within a few millennia of human contact. Prey species had survived and often thrived, but anything that could be classified as an apex predator was gone. Commander Grace Parker analyzed the data and reached a conclusion that terrified her. Humans were not just another apex predator competing for resources. They were something completely outside the normal galactic ecosystem. They were a species that specialized in making apex predators extinct, and they seemed to do it without conscious effort or malicious intent. The Veltar delegation tried to explain their fear during a final meeting with human leadership. Ambassador Nithville showed them images of civilizations that had existed before human expansion reached their regions of space. Every image showed apex predator species that had ruled their domains for millions of years. Then he showed them current images of the same regions. The apex predators were gone. In their place were thriving civilizations of prey species that had developed technology and culture beyond anything they had achieved while living under predator dominance. The galaxy had become safer and more peaceful, but at the cost of entire categories of life. Dr. Wright realized the horrible truth as she studied the complete records. Humans were not just eliminating apex predator species by accident. Their evolutionary psychology was specifically designed to identify and eliminate anything that could threaten the survival of prey species. They were the galaxy's ultimate predator hunters, and they were very good at their job. The question that no one wanted to ask was whether humans could control this instinct. Every piece of evidence suggested that the elimination of apex predators was an unconscious process that humans carried out simply by being themselves. They did not need to declare war or make conscious decisions about which species to target. Their mere presence in a region seemed to be enough to doom any apex predator species that lived there. Dr. Susan Clark had requested access to the deepest levels of the Galactic Historical Archives. Ambassador Nithvel had been reluctant to grant this access, but the human delegation had insisted. What Clark found in those classified records forced her to completely reconsider everything she thought she knew about human history and Earth's place in the universe. The archives went back over 2 million years and contained detailed surveys of every inhabited planet in the galaxy. Earth had been cataloged and studied dozens of times by different alien civilizations. Each survey had noted the same disturbing pattern that previous observers had documented. Earth was a planet where apex predator species appeared and then vanished with shocking regularity. Agent Kevin Murphy worked with Dr. Janet Taylor to cross-reference the alien survey data with Earth's fossil record. The correlation was impossible to ignore. Every major extinction event in Earth's history had occurred at exactly the same time as significant advances in human tool-making and social development. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. Dr. Taylor had spent her career studying mass extinctions, and she had always assumed they were caused by natural disasters or climate changes. The alien records told a different story. They showed that early human populations had somehow triggered cascade effects that eliminated the large predator species that should have kept human numbers in check. The most disturbing discovery was that humans had been doing this for much longer than anyone had realized. The alien archives contained evidence of organized human activity in geological layers that were supposed to predate the development of human intelligence by hundreds of thousands of years. Either human evolution had happened much faster than scientists believed, or humans had been deliberately hiding their true capabilities. Rob Williams led a series of expeditions to investigate worlds where similar extinction patterns had been documented. The joint human and Veltar teams visited 12 different star systems, where apex predator species had mysteriously vanished after contact with early human expansion. Each world told the same story with frightening consistency. The planet Vorthka had been home to the Scalanth, a species of massive reptilian predators that had dominated their continent for over 3 million years. The Skylanth had been intelligent tool users with a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy and engineering. They had built cities and developed spaceflight thousands of years before humans had left their home planet. Archaeological evidence showed that humans had established a small research colony on Vorthka approximately 40,000 years ago. The colony had consisted of fewer than 1,000 individuals who appeared to be studying the local ecosystem. They had made no aggressive moves against the Scalanth and had actually established trade relationships with the dominant species. 5,000 years, the Skylanth had completely disappeared. The archaeological record showed no signs of warfare or conflict between humans and the native apex predators. The Scalanth cities were intact, and their technology was undamaged. But there were no Scalanth left alive anywhere on the planet. The species had simply stopped existing. Dr. Clark found similar patterns on every world that the expedition teams investigated. Human settlements were always small and apparently peaceful. The humans seemed to coexist with local apex predator species for several thousand years. Then the apex predators would gradually decline and eventually vanish entirely while prey species flourished and developed new technologies. Commander Grace Parker analyzed the demographic data from the extinct civilizations and discovered something that chilled her to the bone. The apex predator species had not been killed off by violence or disease. They had stopped reproducing. Birth rates had declined gradually over thousands of years until the species could no longer maintain viable populations. Dr. Taylor worked with xenobiologists to understand how this reproductive decline could happen without obvious cause. The answer lay in subtle changes to the planetary ecosystem that occurred wherever humans established permanent settlements. Humans had an unconscious ability to modify their environment in ways that created stress responses in apex predator species. The modifications were not traumatic or obviously harmful. Humans introduced new plant species that changed soil chemistry. They altered water flow patterns through construction projects. They changed the behavior of prey species through selective hunting and domestication. Each individual change was minor, but the cumulative effect created an environment where apex predators could not successfully raise offspring. Agent Murphy discovered that this pattern had been documented by alien observers for over 100,000 years. Multiple civilizations had studied human expansion and reached the same conclusion. Humans were a species that specialized in ecosystem modification, specifically designed to eliminate apex predators while protecting and nurturing prey species. The most frightening aspect of this ability was that humans seemed to be completely unaware of what they were doing. The extinction of apex predator species happened as a side effect of normal human colonization activities. Humans did not set out to destroy other civilizations. They simply lived their lives, and other species died out around them. Dr. Clark found records of attempts by various alien civilizations to warn apex predator species about the human threat. In every case, the warnings had been ignored or dismissed. Apex predators were used to being the dominant force in their regions and could not believe that a prey species could pose a serious threat to their existence. The Galactic Council archives contained detailed studies of human psychology and behavior patterns. Alien scientists had spent thousands of years trying to understand what made humans so effective at eliminating competition. The answer was disturbing in its simplicity. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters who could track prey across vast distances and coordinate their efforts across large populations. But they had also developed empathy and cooperation instincts that extended beyond their own species. They formed emotional bonds with other prey species and felt compelled to protect them from predators. This combination of hunting skills and protective instincts made humans uniquely dangerous to apex predator species. Humans would hunt apex predators not for food or territory, but to protect other species that they viewed as innocent or vulnerable. They would pursue this goal with the same persistence that their ancestors had used to hunt mammoth across ice age landscapes. Captain Williams made the most disturbing discovery during an expedition to the Rim Worlds. The archaeological evidence showed that human expansion had not been random or accidental. Early human space travelers had specifically targeted star systems that contained apex predator species. They had bypassed systems dominated by prey species and focused their colonization efforts on worlds where apex predators needed to be eliminated. Dr. Taylor analyzed the navigation records from ancient human spacecraft and found evidence of a coordinated campaign that had lasted for tens of thousands of years. Early humans had systematically visited every known apex predator civilization in their region of the galaxy. They had established peaceful contact and then quietly set about the business of making those civilizations extinct. The pattern was so consistent across time and space that it could not be explained as coincidence or accident. Humans had been deliberately eliminating apex predator species for much longer than recorded history suggested. They had been doing it so effectively and quietly that most of the galaxy had not realized what was happening until it was too late. Agent Murphy found the final piece of evidence in a classified section of the archives that required special authorization to access. The records showed that the Galactic Council had been aware of human activities for over 50,000 years. They had been monitoring human expansion and documenting the systematic extinction of apex predator species. The Council had chosen not to intervene because the results of human activity had been overwhelmingly positive for galactic civilization. Regions where humans had eliminated apex predators became more peaceful and prosperous. Prey species developed advanced technologies and created stable democratic governance. The galaxy became a safer place for everyone except apex predators. Now humans had developed space travel and were preparing to expand beyond their current territory. The remaining apex predator species in the galaxy faced the same fate as their predecessors. The question was whether the Galactic Council should warn them or simply allow the process to continue until humans had eliminated every apex predator in the known universe. The emergency sessions of the Galactic Council had been running continuously for 6 days. Admiral Tom Baker monitored the communications traffic while Dr. Frank Green analyzed the political implications of what was being called the greatest crisis in galactic history. 3 distinct factions had emerged among the alien species, and each proposed a radically different solution to what they termed the human problem. The militant coalition was led by the surviving Cathara clans who had ruled 14 star systems until human expansion had reached their territory. The Cathara had lost most of their population to the mysterious reproductive decline that seemed to follow human colonization. Their remaining leaders demanded immediate military action against humanity before their species joined the long list of extinct apex predators. General Linda Ross studied the Cathara battle plans with growing concern. Despite their reputation as the galaxy's most feared warriors, the Cathara had never faced an opponent like humanity. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming firepower and direct confrontation. They had no experience fighting an enemy that specialized in making apex predator species extinct through subtle ecosystem manipulation. The Cathara fleet consisted of massive dreadnought vessels equipped with plasma cannons that could crack planets. Their ground forces used powered armor and energy weapons that could level cities. Against any normal apex predator species, these advantages would guarantee victory. But the alien archives showed that humans had eliminated dozens of technologically superior civilizations without firing a shot. The second faction was the Isolation Alliance, led by most of the prey species who had survived and thrived in regions where humans had eliminated local apex predators. These species argued for immediate quarantine of all human-occupied territory. They wanted to build an impenetrable barrier around human space that would prevent further expansion while protecting the remaining apex predator species. Dr. Kelly Wilson pointed out the obvious flaws in this approach. Humans had already demonstrated an ability to overcome any obstacle given enough time and motivation. The species that had tried to contain human expansion in the past had all failed. Barriers and quarantine zones had only delayed the inevitable extinction of apex predator species. The Isolation faction had the support of HFY, several ancient civilizations that had survived previous galactic catastrophes by avoiding contact with dangerous species. They proposed using automated defense systems and gravitational barriers to create a permanent prison around human territory. The plan would require the cooperation of hundreds of species and massive amounts of resources. Ambassador Roy Phillips worked with the third faction, known as the Integration Alliance. This group believed that humanity's unique nature could be channeled toward protecting galactic civilization rather than destroying it. They argued that the systematic elimination of apex predators had actually made the galaxy safer and more prosperous for everyone else. The Integration Alliance was led by several species that had direct experience with human contact. The Veltar themselves had seen how human settlements created stable, peaceful regions where prey species could develop advanced technologies without fear of predation. They argued that the galaxy was better off without apex predator species that existed only to dominate and consume other forms of life. Secretary of State Carol White led the human delegation that was attempting to participate in discussions about their own species' fate. The aliens struggled with the fundamental contradiction of including humans in decisions about humanity while simultaneously fearing what those same humans might do if they were excluded from the process. Defense Secretary Mark Johnson worked with military advisors from multiple species to analyze the strategic implications of each proposed solution. The military experts agreed that direct confrontation with humanity would likely result in the extinction of any species that attempted it. Humans had proven remarkably effective at eliminating opposition, even when they were supposedly trying to be peaceful. The debate raged for weeks, while representatives from over 400 species argued about how to deal with humanity. The archives contained detailed records of human contact with dozens of civilizations. In every case, the initial contact had been peaceful and beneficial. The apex predator species had welcomed human trade and technology exchange. Then they had gradually faded away as their birth rates declined and their populations aged beyond replacement levels. Dr. Rachel Miller made the discovery that changed the entire nature of the debate. While analyzing the deepest sections of the Galactic Council archive, she found references to an ancient threat that had been deliberately hidden from most member species. The references were fragmentary and encoded, but they painted a picture of something called the Devourers. The Devourers were described as an extragalactic species that had systematically consumed entire galaxies. According to the ancient records, they traveled between galaxies in massive ships that could strip all life from star systems within decades. Every civilization that had encountered the Devourers had been completely eliminated with no survivors and no trace of their existence. The most disturbing aspect of the Devourer threat was that they seemed to be attracted to galaxies that contained large numbers of advanced apex predator species. The ancient records suggested that apex predators created some kind of galactic signature that the Devourers could detect across intergalactic distances. Galaxies dominated by apex predator civilizations were systematically targeted for consumption. Dr. Miller found evidence that the last Devourer incursion had occurred approximately 50,000 years ago. The attack had been repelled, but only after the loss of over 90% of galactic civilization. The surviving species had made a collective decision to hide all records of the Devourer threat to prevent panic and social collapse. The implications were staggering. If the ancient records were accurate, then humanity's systematic elimination of apex predator species was not just beneficial for galactic peace. It was essential for galactic survival. Humans were unconsciously protecting the entire galaxy from detection by the most dangerous predators in the known universe. Admiral Baker analyzed the correlation between human expansion and the decline in galactic signature emissions. The regions where humans had eliminated apex predator species showed dramatically reduced energy outputs and military activities. From an external perspective, these regions would appear to contain only primitive prey species that posed no threat to galactic order. The Integration Alliance seized on this discovery to support their position. They argued that humanity represented the galaxy's best defense against external threats. Rather than trying to contain or eliminate humans, the Galactic Councils should be encouraging human expansion to eliminate the remaining apex predator species before they could attract Devourer attention. Colonel Eric Thompson reviewed the strategic implications with Dr. Lisa Anderson. If the Devourer threat was real, then the galaxy faced an impossible choice. They could preserve the remaining apex predator species and risk attracting another incursion that would destroy all life. Or they could allow humans to complete their unconscious mission of elimination and hope that the reduced galactic signature would provide protection. The militant coalition rejected the Devourer theory as propaganda designed to justify human expansion. The Kathara leaders argued that the ancient records were unreliable and that the supposed external threat was being used to mask a simple case of one apex predator species attempting to eliminate all competition. But the prey species that made up the Isolation Alliance were terrified by the implications. If the Devourers were real and were attracted to apex predator activity, then any attempt to preserve the remaining apex predator species could doom the entire galaxy. The isolation barriers that they had proposed might actually make the situation worse by concentrating apex predator activity in a small region. The debate continued while deep space monitoring stations began reporting unusual energy signatures at the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Michelle Brown analyzed the readings and found patterns that matched descriptions from the ancient Devourer records. Something massive was moving through intergalactic space toward the region of the universe. President Garcia authorized increased cooperation with the Galactic Council while maintaining strict limits on human territorial concessions. The human government was willing to accept monitoring and oversight of their expansion activities, but they would not agree to permanent quarantine or restrictions on their fundamental rights as a sapient species. The final decision came when the Galactic Council's most ancient member emerged from hibernation to address the crisis. The being known only as the Archivist had been alive during the last Devourer incursion and had direct memory of the events that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Its testimony would settle the debate about humanity's true purpose and the reality of the external threat that shaped their evolution. The Archivist had not spoken to the Galactic Council for over 20,000 years. Dr. Michelle Brown and Commander Peter Davis were among the few humans granted permission to witness its testimony. The ancient being appeared as a shifting pattern of energy and light that hurt to look at directly. Its voice resonated through dimensions that human ears were not designed to perceive. Archivist began its testimony by confirming the reality of the Devourer threat. 50,000 years ago, massive ships had emerged from the void between galaxies and begun systematically consuming all life in their path. The Devourers were not simply another apex predator species. They were something far worse. They existed only to consume and convert living matter into energy for their endless expansion across the universe. The last incursion had lasted 3,000 years and had eliminated over 90% of galactic civilization. Entire star systems had been stripped of all organic matter within decades. Advanced civilizations that had existed for millions of years had been reduced to empty space and dead planets. The survivors had been forced to hide in the darkest corners of the galaxy while the Devourers completed their harvest. Colonel Eric Thompson studied the tactical records that the Archivist shared with the Council. The Devourers were not interested in conquest or domination. They treated galaxies like farms to be harvested when the crop was ready. They seemed to have an instinctive ability to detect when a galaxy contained enough advanced civilizations to make harvesting worthwhile. The key factor was the presence of apex predator species. Advanced apex predators created distinctive energy signatures through their military activities and territorial expansion. These signatures were apparently visible across intergalactic distances and served as beacons that attracted Devourer attention. Galaxies dominated by peaceful prey species remained invisible to the harvesters. Dr. Lisa Anderson realized the horrible implications of this revelation. Humanity was not just randomly eliminating apex predator species. They had evolved specifically to serve as the galaxy's immune system. Their unconscious drive to eliminate apex predators was an evolutionary response to the Devourer threat that operated on a timescale of tens of thousands of years. The Archivist confirmed this analysis in terms that chilled every being present. At the testimony, humanity had been created. They were not a natural evolutionary development, but rather an engineered species, designed by the survivors of the last Devourer incursion. The ancient civilizations had used their combined knowledge to create the perfect weapon against future harvests. The engineering process had taken thousands of years and had involved careful manipulation of human evolution on Earth, the survivors, had guided human development to ensure that they would develop the specific combination of traits needed to eliminate apex predator species without destroying galactic civilization entirely. Agent Karen Foster worked with Dr. Richard Lee to understand the full scope of what had been done to humanity. The ancient records showed that human psychology had been carefully designed to make them effective apex predator hunters, while maintaining their capacity for cooperation and empathy with prey species. Humans had been given the persistence hunting instincts needed to track and eliminate apex predators across galactic distances. They had been programmed with protective instincts that made them want to defend vulnerable prey species from predation. Most importantly, they had been designed to carry out this mission unconsciously so that they would not be corrupted by power or diverted from their purpose. The engineering had been so subtle that humans themselves had never realized their true nature. They believed that their expansion across the galaxy was driven by curiosity and the desire for resources. They thought that the extinction of apex predator species was an unfortunate side effect of their activities. They had no idea that they were fulfilling their original programming as the galaxy's defense against cosmic predators. Commander Tony Martinez reviewed the final agreements that emerged from the Council's deliberations. Humanity would be granted sovereign control over galactic defense against external threats. In exchange, they would submit to voluntary monitoring of their activities within Council space. The remaining apex predator species would be relocated to designated preservation zones where they could exist without triggering devourer detection systems. The solution was unprecedented in galactic history. Never before had a single species been granted such broad authority over galactic security. But the alternative was to risk another devourer incursion that would eliminate all life in the galaxy. The Council members voted to accept human leadership in defensive matters while maintaining their own authority over internal galactic affairs. Dr. Sarah Williams was analyzing data from the deep space monitoring stations when the priority transmission arrived. The energy signatures that had been detected at the edge of the galaxy were growing stronger. Something massive was approaching from intergalactic space, and it matched the descriptions from the ancient devourer records. The transmission came from the Kepler Array, the most advanced detection system in human space. The massive artificial structure had been moving toward the Milky Way for centuries, but had only recently become visible to galactic sensors. The object was larger than entire star systems and was generating energy signatures that indicated active life support systems for billions of beings. Admiral Baker coordinated the galactic response while D.R. Green analyzed the implications of the approaching threat. The devourers were returning ahead of schedule. Instead of waiting another 10,000 years for galactic civilization to fully recover, they were arriving while apex predator species still existed to serve as beacons for their harvesting activities. The timing was not coincidental. The archivist revealed that the devourers had somehow detected the recent increase in apex predator activity that had occurred as various species developed space travel and began expanding beyond their home systems. The galaxy had become visible to the harvesters earlier than expected, but this time the galaxy was not defenseless. Humanity had been specifically designed to combat this threat. Their unconscious mission to eliminate apex predators had been preparation for this moment. The question was whether 50,000 years of evolution and preparation would be enough to face the greatest threat in the known universe. Colonel Carter began implementing the defense protocols that had been developed during the council sessions. Human military forces would coordinate with the remaining friendly apex predator species to present a unified resistance to the devourer incursion. The prey species would provide support and resources while staying hidden from the main conflict. Dr. Williams received updates from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy as the approaching structure became visible to more sensors. The devourer ship was not just large. It was a mobile ecosystem containing the harvested remains of dozens of previous galaxies. The beings aboard that ship had consumed entire civilizations and were now bringing that accumulated power to bear against the Milky Way. But for the first time in their expansion across the universe, the Devourers would face prey that had been specifically designed to hunt them. Humanity would finally fulfill its evolutionary purpose and discover whether they truly were something worse than apex predators. They were about to become the predators that hunted predators on a cosmic scale. The galaxy held its breath as sensors detected the first Devourer scout ships entering the outer rim. After 50,000 years of preparation, the ultimate test was about to begin. Humanity would either save galactic civilization or die in the attempt. Either way, they would finally understand what they had been created to be and why their very existence struck fear into the hearts of every apex predator in the known universe.